Many people move through the world with a vision blurred by the shimmer of gold and the weight of labels, often mistaking a simple exterior for a lack of substance. They walk through life believing that the price tag on a person's coat determines the value of their soul. On a crisp, windswept Tuesday afternoon in the heart of the city, Barbara Sullivan was about to learn that some of the most powerful people in the world are those who feel no need to shout about it. When she looked at Elena Rodriguez in the hushed, perfume-scented aisles of the city's most exclusive boutique, she didn't see a peer or even a fellow human being. She saw an intruder in her private sanctuary of wealth. Little did she know that the woman she was about to humiliate was the silent anchor of a multi-billion-dollar empire. A woman who could dismantle Barbara's social standing with a single, quiet conversation. Elena Rodriguez had always been a woman of quiet strength and intentional simplicity. Despite the immense wealth her husband, Robert Anderson, had amassed over 2 decades of revolutionary tech leadership, Elena remained grounded. She still worked 3 days a week as a senior coordinator at a local community center, a job she refused to quit because it kept her connected to the heartbeat of the real world. She wore her hair in a practical style, preferred high-quality but unbranded clothing, and drove a 5-year-old SUV because it was reliable. To her, wealth was a tool for philanthropy and security. It's not a costume for performance. That afternoon, however, was different. It was the eve of their 20th wedding anniversary, a milestone that felt like a lifetime of shared secrets and hard-won victories. Robert was planning a grand gala, but Elena wanted something personella, dress that made her feel like the girl he had met in a college library, yet reflected the woman she had become. She had seen a particular gown in the window of Aurelian's, a boutique where the doorman wore white gloves and the prices were never listed because, as the saying goes, if you have to ask, you cannot afford it. As Elena pushed through the heavy glass doors, the scent of expensive lilies and sandalwood enveloped her. The store was a cathedral of consumerism, with marble floors so polished they looked like still water. She felt a small flutter of excitement, a rare indulgence in a life dedicated to service. She moved toward a rack of silk gowns, her eyes landing on a midnight blue piece that seemed to hold the stars within its fabric. It was perfect. She reached out, her fingers just inches from the delicate material, when a sharp, cold voice cut through the stillness of the room. "I wouldn't touch that if I were you. The oils from your skin could ruin the silk. I highly doubt your entire year's salary could cover the cleaning bill, let alone the dress itself." Elena froze. She turned slowly to find a woman standing a few feet away, draped in a cream-colored cashmere wrap and dripping in diamonds that caught the overhead LED lights. Barbara Sullivan didn't just look at Elena. She appraised her, her eyes darting from Elena's sensible leather boots to her lack of visible logos. Barbara was a fixture of the city's elite social scene, a woman whose life was a series of carefully choreographed appearances at charity. Luncheons where the cost of the flower arrangements exceeded the actual donations. "I'm just looking," Elena said softly, keeping her voice steady despite the sudden surge of adrenaline. "It's a beautiful piece." Barbara let out a dry, melodic laugh that held no warmth. Beauty is reserved for those who can appreciate it with their checkbooks, not just their eyes. This isn't a museum, dear. It's a boutique for people of a certain caliber, perhaps. The department store 3 blocks down would be more suited to your aesthetic. They have a lovely clearance section, I'm told. Sales associate, a young man named Julian, who had been trained to spot old money from a mile away, hurried over. He looked between the two women, his gaze lingering on Barbara's limited edition handbag before shifting to Elena's unadorned appearance. The choice, in his mind, was simple. "Is there a problem, Mrs. Sullivan?" he asked, his tone dripping with a servility he didn't offer to Elena. "The problem, Julian, is the lack of vetting at the front door," Barbara snapped, her eyes never leaving Elena. "I come here for an exclusive experience. I don't expect to share my air with people who are clearly lost. It ruins the atmosphere of the brand." Elena felt a familiar pang of disappointment. She had spent her life fighting these invisible barriers, but she usually did it for the families at the community center. She wasn't used to being the target herself in such a blatant way. "I am a customer," Elena stated, her posture straightening. "I am here to purchase a dress for my anniversary. My presence here is as valid as yours." Barbara stepped closer, the smell of her expensive perfume becoming stifling. Validity is bought, not claimed. Look at yourself. You look like you spent the morning filing paperwork in a basement. You don't belong among these fabrics. You don't belong in this neighborhood. Julian, either she leaves, or I take my business and my husband's corporate account to your competitor across the street. Julian looked at Alina with a mixture of pity and annoyance. Ma'am, perhaps it would be best if you moved on. We are expecting several high-profile clients this afternoon, and we need to keep the floor clear. Alina looked at the blue dress one last time. It was just a piece of fabric, but the injustice of the moment was heavy. She realized that Barbara Sullivan wasn't just an arrogant woman. She was a symptom of a world that valued the wrapper more than the gift. Alina took a slow, deep breath. She reached into her simple bag and pulled out her phone. I need to make a call, Alina said quietly. Barbara rolled her eyes, turning back to a mirror to check her reflection. Oh, please. Who are you calling? Your supervisor to tell them you'll be late back from your lunch break? Do us all a favor and do it outside. Alina ignored her. She waited for the call to connect. When the voice on the other end answered, it was warm and instantly attentive. Robert, Alina said, her voice clear and unwavering. I'm at Aurelian's on 5th. There's a bit of an issue with the staff and a particularly vocal customer. I think I'd like you to join me. The voice on the other end changed instantly, the warmth replaced by a sharp, protective focus. I'll be there in 5 minutes. Don't move. For the next 5 minutes, the boutique was a theater of tension. Barbara continued to browse, making loud comments about the decline of social standards. While Julian stood guard near the door, acting as a human barrier between the elite and the intruder, Alina stood by the window. Watching the city traffic, her face a mask of calm, she wasn't angry. She was disappointed that in a city so full of life, some people chose to spend theirs being so remarkably small. Suddenly, the quiet hum of the street was interrupted by the sound of 2 black SUVs pulling up to the curb. The doorman's eyes went wide as he recognized the license plates. He scrambled to open the door, his movements frantic. Robert Anderson stepped into the boutique like a silent storm. He didn't wear a crown, but he didn't need one. His presence filled the room, a combination of absolute confidence and controlled power. He didn't look at the racks of clothes or the marble floors. His eyes found Alina immediately, and he walked straight to her, ignoring Julian and Barbara as if they were part of the furniture. Are you okay? He asked, taking her hands in his. I'm fine, Robert, she said, a small smile finally reaching her lips. Just a misunderstanding of values. Barbara Sullivan had frozen the moment Robert entered. She knew exactly who he was. Every person in the city's top tax bracket knew the man who had revolutionized global logistics and held the keys to half the commercial real estate in the district. Her face, previously flushed with arrogance, turned a ghostly shade of white. Mr. Anderson, Julian gasped, his voice cracking. We didn't know. I am so incredibly sorry. If we had realized this lady was with you, Robert turned his head, his gaze cold enough to stop the air in Julian's lungs. She isn't with me. I am with her. And the fact that your level of respect depends on a person's husband tells me everything I need to know about your training and this establishment's culture. He then turned his eyes toward Barbara, who was trying to shrink into her cashmere wrap. And you, Robert said, his voice low and dangerous. Barbara, isn't it? I believe your husband, Gerald, is currently seeking a renewal on the lease for his firm's headquarters in the Anderson Plaza. I also believe he's looking for a lead investor for his new venture. Barbara tried to find her voice, but it was buried under a mountain of regret. Robert, I didn't realize who she was. That's the problem, Barbara, Alina said, stepping forward. You shouldn't need to know who someone is to treat them with basic decency. You assumed that because I didn't look like you, I didn't matter. You assumed that your wealth gave you the right to be a bully. Robert looked at the manager who had just rushed out from the back office, sweating profusely. I want the name of the owner of this franchise. And Julian, you might want to start updating your resume. My wife came here to celebrate our life together, and instead, she was treated like a trespasser. Please Please, Mr. Anderson, how can we make this right? The manager begged. The dress is on us. Anything in the store, a gift from Aurelians. Lena shook her head. I don't want the dress anymore. Every time I looked at it, I would remember the ugliness of this afternoon. We're leaving. As they walked toward the door, Robert stopped and looked back at Barbara. I'll be calling Gerald this evening. I think we need to have a very serious conversation about the company he keeps and how it reflects on his business interests. Arrogance is a very expensive luxury, Barbara. I hope you found it worth the cost. They stepped out into the sunlight, the heavy doors of the boutique closing behind them with a definitive thud. The interior of the store remained in a state of panicked silence. Ghost of Barbara's pride lingering like a bad scent. In the back seat of the SUV, Robert took Elena's hand. I'm sorry you had to deal with that. I thought the city was getting better. It is getting better, Elena said, leaning her head on his shoulder. But there will always be people who think the world is a ladder they have to climb by stepping on others. I'm just glad I have someone who stands on the ground with me. The story of what happened at Aurelian spread through the city's elite circles like wildfire. It wasn't just gossip. It was a warning. Barbara Sullivan found herself suddenly excluded from the very luncheons she used to dominate. Her husband's lease was renewed, but only after a very public and very large donation to the community center where Elena worked. It's a donation that was documented in the city's largest newspaper. Elena eventually found her dress in a small, quiet shop run by a grandmother who saw the light in Elena's eyes before she even saw the contents of her purse. On the night of their anniversary, Elena looked radiant, not because of the silk she wore, but because of the grace she carried. The lesson of that Tuesday afternoon remained. True power isn't found in the ability to diminish others. It's found in the integrity to remain yourself, no matter the setting. Barbara Sullivan learned that a person's worth is never found on a price tag. And Julian learned that the most important customer is the one who expects nothing but kindness. As for Elena and Robert, they continued to walk through the world hand in hand, proving that the greatest wealth of all is a heart that doesn't need to prove its value to anyone. When we look at others, we should remember that everyone is fighting a battle we know nothing about, and every person deserves the dignity of being seen. Appearances are a veil, and those who dare to look behind it find a world far richer than any boutique could ever offer. In the end, we are not remembered for the clothes we wore, but for the way we made others feel when they were standing right in front of us. Always choose kindness, for you never know when you are standing in the presence of a soul that could change your world.